are you? How is everyone out there? My name is Jeffrey D. Erb. I'm the president of McCann Health Engagement, and we are the insights, media, and overall engagement organization across all of McCann Health. And today we're going to talk about what it means to be able to start to move past what people traditionally think of as NPP or other ways of reaching HCPs or other customers, and really get into understanding how to connect with them as individuals through personalized digital engagement. And the end result of that ultimately is to create higher lift by leveraging insights and behavioral data to understand custom learning preferences with regards to the ways that these audiences prefer to learn. So when we really think about it, it's important when we look at science and we start to think about how we're going to connect with people as individuals, that we speak to their hearts and minds so that the science around our brands and around the overall therapeutic areas that we're trying to communicate can be truly understood, trusted, and drive positive change. And the only way to really do that is to relate to people in today's world in ways that are really meaningful to them. They're not digesting information anymore at face value. It's something that they really want to understand, but we're in a unique time when just providing information isn't necessarily the best way to deliver or allow something to resonate with someone as it relates to the way that they comprehend or the way they learn. So I like to say that I might look very much like another individual who is traditionally considered a persona, and I might have the same family make, I might have the same job, I might have the same car, we both have dogs. Everything might look exactly the same, and we might have allergies, or we might both be cardiologists. But at the end of the day, the ways that we prefer to learn and the things that are going to get us to engage are going to be really, really different. So he may, for example, go golfing every weekend with his friends, and I may play video games with my kids, and he may learn by watching video content, whereas I might learn better by reading. And so the ways that we connect with our world and the ways that we really drive the ability to connect with any kind of content are really different. And so we want to make sure that we're able to meet people where they're able to understand in a way that they are able to digest as an individual. So how people have learned has really changed. And that, what I just articulated, is really about meeting people at that place, looking at the ways that we can connect with them uniquely on a one-to-one basis. So it's not just reading content or digesting content, but really making sure that we're surrounding people with ways and following them through their entire process in a way that's going to be meaningful to them so that they can evolve and learn in the ways that they tend to prefer to learn, because people are very, very different. And so all of this really needs to be driven by data, because data is what's going to get us to that place. Data really leads that personalized engagement. And at this point in time, it's expected. People have grown up. HCPs are millennials now. Millennial age group goes up to the age of 42 or 43 at this point in time. And the ways that people have digested things in their personal lives translates to the way that they're used to digesting things in their business life. And so these omnichannel hyper-personalized learning experiences are really truly expected at this point, not just because of the fact that they're looking for it from their partner as it relates to a pharmaceutical company, but this is the way that they're expected to be able to learn in any facet of their lives. And we have to really bear in mind that when they're digesting content, they're not digesting content differently because they're looking at professional content versus the way that they're looking at content or information on as a consumer. And so in order to do that, we really need to look at, there's three different stages. And I like to say that it's important to kind of get past, most people think of from a marketing perspective, the who, what, where, when, and how that people tend to engage with content or engage with the marketing messaging. But it's really important to get to the why. And that why is really what helps establish our understanding as it relates to what makes an individual up and what consists how they prefer to learn and who they are as an individual. And we need to, in order to achieve behavioral change, there's three elements that really need to be in place. There needs to be capability, which is the knowledge and skills needed to make the change, which is kind of the nuts and bolts that we have. We need to provide an opportunity that makes it easy for them to change. And from that, it really means providing the kinds of resources that somebody is looking for or requires in order to start to think differently. And then, of course, we need to help influence motivation. And there needs to be a personal motivation to make a change and a reason to care. And in order to achieve all three of these things, we really need to understand who these individuals are. And this framework needs to be applied across the board to all education and engagement strategies, regardless of whether you're looking at it from a personal perspective or whether you're driving an OTC brand that's going to be connecting with directly with patients. We really need to understand these individuals in new and innovative ways so that we can meet them on their terms. When we look at hyper-personalized engagement, it's really based upon what is important to individuals when they need it most. So traditionally, we're thinking about where people are going, who they are, and what we really need to do is look at what that individual is drawn to and how that person learns. How are they engaging, and what's attracting them to make differences with regards to the ways that they drive their own individual behavior? So in order to do that, we are really looking at leveraging data. And generally speaking, all of you sit on a treasure trove of data. And across the board by 2025, it's estimated that 463 exabytes of data will be created each day globally. I don't even know what that means. That's just a lot, in my opinion. It's just a great word, exabyte. I have no idea how much that is, but it's a lot. So when we look at what that actually, how we think about that, traditionally the data that you're using, the data that you receive on a day-to-day basis tends to sit in silos. So there's individual elements that are being used for very specific purposes. And that existence really doesn't equate into integration. And so as a result of that, there's gaps between these data sets. And we really are facing these incomplete pictures, which is going to lead to fragmented customer engagements because we're not bringing all the resources we have to bear into one place in order to make sure we're delivering and understanding the audience in the most effective way. You may receive sales data that's used for very specific purposes, and you may receive performance data from your media partners that's used for a specific purpose, and you may receive other information about the ways that people are engaging. But when we bring all of this information together, it really helps create a much more significant picture with regards to the ways that people learn. And this is going to allow us to connect these behavioral insights to deep-rooted customer attitudes, beliefs, motivations, and preferences. It's really about bringing all this information we already have to complete a picture so that we can see what these individuals are doing. And with the data that you already have, and with data that's out there that's GDPR compliant, we're able to really look at and understand who individual HCPs are in most markets. We can really look at and understand how they prefer to engage, looking at the way they've engaged in the past. We can look at content preferences. Do they prefer news, or do they tend to be drawn more towards clinical trials or conferences? Are they engaging with video over text or interactivity? What channels? Where are they actually going for information? What time of day do they tend to be engaging? How frequently are they connecting with patients, and what segment are they as it relates to how they tend to engage or prescribe? And when we look at operationally who these individuals are, we can see how much time they're actually spending on content, whether it's editorial content or content that's driven through from yourselves, or how much time they're spending with brand resources. Are they opening emails? If they are, how often are they opening? And what kind of messaging is resonating with them? We can really look at and index the performance of various program drivers. And that allows us to see what we could be doing differently in order to bring this forward. Are we focusing on content that's more data-driven for one doctor versus another? Or is one doctor more patient experience driven with regards to the way that they tend to resonate what's most important to them as it relates to what impacts them from a change perspective? And which ways should we be looking at that are going to be most impactful for one doctor versus another? So when we look at how we do that, we're going to bring forward data, all these data that I mentioned, along with digital tools that can be used in order to look at these trends that can drive personalized engagement. At McCann Health, we have a platform we call Resonance, and Resonance allows us to layer proprietary first and third-party data along with syndicated research and qualitative and quantitative research, that pulling all of this information together allows us to achieve those three elements that we talked about from the overall approach that we need to be able to deliver in order to meet these people in the way that it's going to be most effective for them. So when we bring all of this data together and we start leveraging it in a way that's going to be meaningful, we can see that Dr. Sina, who's a cardiologist, tends to engage with video and email and is more concerned about data, is going to be delivered different approach from a content perspective than Dr. Monzer, who prefers text, values peer opinion, and is more concerned about patient experience. So we're able to create these customized individual learning experiences that allow us to make sure that we're resonating with them uniquely and as individuals. And not only can we look at this and bring this forward and deliver it from a communications plan strategy, but we can also take this data and make sure that it's embedded and integrated with other platforms such as Viva or Adobe or whatever platform that you might be using, that's going to ensure that now not only do we have this view and this ability to connect with these individuals meaningfully through digital and traditional promotions, but we're also able to ensure that the sales team is able to understand and look at what's meaningful to these HCPs and see trends and things that they might not get based upon conversation. Because the reality of it is generally speaking, people tell you what they think you want to hear quite frequently. And they're not really necessarily consciously or unconsciously being honest about what they're actually doing. And so we're able to look at what people are really doing and connect that to what they're saying in order to make sure that we're delivering on the promise of educating and informing them in a way that's going to be meaningful both to them as a professional or as a patient, as well as you as a brand. So when we think about that and we layer all of those different behavioral preferences together, and we're bringing forward the overall journey persona along with those engagement preferences and those operational engagement messages, when we layer that against different decisions, right? We can bring forward creative content, detailed content, guided content, and understand what's happening in their lives as doctors, whether they're testing individuals, whether they're diagnosing individuals, or whether they're prescribing specific therapies or treatments, and what are they doing? And the kinds of content can be delivered differently. Are we bringing forward clinical content or patient education content or visual content or contextual content or straightforward display content? And all of these, when we pull all of this together, this decision-making process is going to allow us to make sure that we're connecting with them, delivering content across devices in a voice that speaks to the individual at the time when they're making decisions, in the voice that's going to be relevant to them uniquely as one HCP individual versus another, and really bring forward different experiences based upon the way they tend to learn. So looking at this helps us really bring forward these external insights that we're also able to see, so we can look at these insights into their behavior. But we can also see, based upon all this data, competitor evidence communication, marketplace landscape insights, overall emotional perception, and making sure that we're looking at the attitudinal differences from one HCP to another or one consumer to another. When we start to think about and we look at social listening and bringing forward overall emotional insights into the mix to make sure that we're connecting with them in ways that are important to them and drive change. And looking at these trends, this is what's going to really drive engagement. So when we think about all these different kinds of data, and we might be looking at large consumer data, we might be looking at partner data, we might be looking at your own data, we might be looking at the physician aggregated data, and we look at syndicated information along with qualitative and quantitative research, then we can really pull forward what we call behavioral map. And when we're mapping out someone's behavior, we're able to understand how they're connecting and how they're engaging between themselves and patients. What is their perception of media, or what's their perception of the educational content that's being brought forward to them? Looking from a social listening perspective, understanding that emotional sentiment. What's the overall share of voice that competitors have and the trending topics that they're most interested in? Looking and helping to define what those actionable high-value audience segments are, and really look at what's going to be those emotional, psychological, behavioral drivers behind what's going to cause them to actually engage. And that allows us also to make some decisions about what are going to be the most effective channels that we should be leveraging, and what are going to be the most efficacious channels in order to drive action, depending upon what those actions that we're trying to derive might be, and the overall brand goals. So at the end of the day, what we're really doing is accomplishing the ability to get through information overload. There's so much information out there that it really creates digital fatigue. And when we think about what that means, there's so much content coming to people on a consistent basis, and there's so much information coming from different people at different points in time. That's really why it's most important to create these new experiences that are going to be very purposeful with regards to how we engage with them and the things that are going to be most important to them. It allows us to cut through the noise and drive and meet them where and when they're actually engaging with content. Because that content engagement and the way that people are connecting doesn't stop at the end of the day. It stops when you stop connecting with them. And when we look at how people learn based upon when and how and where we're connecting with them, there's a lot of different things that come to the table. We have to think about the social and contextual elements around learning, and in fact, they're learning from and with others. It's well known that HCPs have a very, very high ranking as it relates to their colleagues and the way their colleagues are thinking and how they impact each other. Understanding experientialism and working with them to learn through experiences. Understanding ways to connect with them through constructivism, through mental models, and cognitivism, through the flow of knowledge, and ultimately behaviorism, which is understanding their overall stimulus response and the ways that they're going to really relate to things based upon how they experience and relate to things in their daily lives. And when we think about all of these, it's really data that can help us drive to that particular place in order to connect and engage with them in those ways that are going to be really meaningful. So all of this information and all of this data and all of these ways of looking at and creating these maps really has very practical application. And it's not just theory, and it's not just ways of looking at things. And part of the biggest problem I think that most companies have is we've got lots of data, but we don't really know what to do with it. But hopefully what I've been illustrating is that when we see this information and we bring even disparate data sets together, or even unique data sets that you might not have thought were relevant, we're able to find solutions that are going to help build real connectivity between your customer base and your brand. And whether you're in medical communications and want to drive and make sure that you're supplying HCPs with the most appropriate information from a peer-to-peer custom learning perspective, so that you're delivering content to them in ways that you already know they're going to respond to. Or if you're in commercial engagement and want to make sure that you're driving this omnichannel personal engagement, or quite frankly, even Salesforce empowerment and evolving from that non-personal promotion to personalized digital engagement. The whole term non-personal promotion just sounds very cold and stark. And what people want is they want to be related to. They want to be personal with a brand. And we have the ability in this day and age to really get there and connect those dots and relate to people in a way that's going to be meaningful to them through digital means. And the ways that we can drive that and change the experiences they have remotely, change the experiences they have from a digital communications perspective, and quite honestly, change the experiences they have relating to their sales force, because the sales force is evolving. The sales force needs to operate differently. The world has changed, and the pandemic that we've just lived through has really highlighted the fact that while Salesforce is important, the way they communicate, the way they engage, and the ways that we need to support them and drive that communication needs to evolve also. And finally, it's really important to look at how we're going to create these experiences that are going to resonate. And by bringing all of that profile together with this behavioral adoption ladder and connecting with individuals when it's going to be contextually relevant, that's going to create, through tonality, format, the overall prioritization of the way that they're and who they're connecting with from a patient perspective. It's going to connect through real-time personalization, a dynamic content plan that's going to be very differentiated with regards to how you're able to connect with those individuals. So when we think about really what's happening in our world today, there's really a lot to be excited about. The pandemic has truly accelerated significant change in the ways that we think, in the ways that we connect, in the ways that people are expecting to be related to. This disruption has really led and drives significant innovation. By layering these data sets and looking for new ways of doing things, we've been forced to evolve, and we've been forced to really innovate. And that's enabled us to create these hybrid models of engagement that are going to support both those physical and virtual communities. And they're going to be here to stay because people have changed. We're 2 years into the pandemic, and there's a lot of things that might go back to normal, but there's a lot of things that people are looking at, and they're looking at as a positive change as well with regards to their behavior. Science, of course, is going to remain high on the overall agenda, and that data-led personalized engagement experience is really, really, truly expected. And so when we look at how we can connect with these people, it's very important to architect this omni-channel, hyper-personalized learning experiences, because that's what people are expecting. They're expecting to be able to be related to in ways that you understand them without them having to find you and meet you on your terms, because that's the way they're relating to things in the rest of their lives. That's the way other consumer-oriented brands are relating to them. And they have learned a behavioral aspect with regards to what they expect from other brands through consumer brands that we need to start to sort out how to connect and how to relate to them on their own terms throughout the pharmaceutical industry. And with that, I will end my presentation. Again, my name is Jeffrey Erb. I'm the president of McCann Health Engagement. This is my contact information, and I'm sure that the organizers of the event will share. I'm happy to address any questions. I haven't been able to see if there were any coming out of the gate at the moment, but I'll take a look at the little chat to see if there's anything going on. I don't see anything presently, but I do see one question. What about engaging with individuals in a less informal way? So I'm not sure if that means less formal or actually less informal. So from an informal perspective, I would say that it isn't, I think hopefully I addressed a little bit of that with regards to how we're going to be connecting with them and driving with them. It's important to meet them, but you can bring them along on the journey, but you still have to connect with them based upon even if the content is highly scientific, we want to make sure that we're able to deliver it to them in a way that's going to be meaningful. If we're talking about from a less formal perspective, then we are able to connect and understand where they're going and what they're doing as consumers in the same ways that we're able to look at and drive consumer engagement. We just need to be able to segment that and approach that a little differently. And that comes through engagement and learnings with them as we move forward as a brand with the overall media objectives that you might be trying to reach. Because we have to make sure that we're following the individual local guidelines along with GDPR, but we do have that ability to meet them in ways that are both formal as well as informal by understanding what their preferences are and connecting with them more in a way that's going to be relevant to their learning style. Are there any other questions? I don't see any. Well, thank you all very much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your conference, and I will leave you with that and look forward to connecting with any of you at any point in time. Please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.